All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am back, and now we will be talking about NXT Takeover. So, NXT Takeover Dallas took place at the Kay Bailey Convention Center in Dallas, Texas. Obviously, it's very common for there to be NXT Takeover shows before big pay-per-views like SummerSlam and WrestleMania, and so you have this one here in Dallas. It originally had 6 matches in the card, but one of them didn't take place because I guess no one really wanted to see it. So, and that was Apollo Crews and Elias Sampson. No one really wanted to see an Elias Sampson match. Apparently, he's really not that good. So, Apollo Crews is amazing. He's an athletic freak, but Elias Sampson, not really so much. So, there were 5 matches on the card, and the first match was for the NXT Tag Team titles. It had the Revival, who were the tag team champions, against American Alpha, Jason Jordan and Chad Gable. And that was a very good match. If it involves Jason Jordan and Chad Gable, those are basically like Kurt Angle clones. I'm saying that in a good way, not like a Jack Swagger Kurt Angle clone, but like, these guys are on that level. And they ended up winning the NXT Tag Team titles, so, it was a great match either way. So, there you have that. Then you had Austin Aries going up against Baron Corbin. And Baron Corbin actually ended up making his WrestleMania debut 2 days later. But that match, that was probably the worst of the 5. Austin Aries, if you don't know, he was in TNA for a while. That was really where he was known as, being a wrestler in TNA. And so he made his NXT debut that night. And that was probably, even though it was an okay match, it was still the worst match of the night. But then it was a third match that really got everyone talking. It was Sami Zayn going up against the NXT debuting Japanese superstar Shinsuke Nakamura. Shinsuke Nakamura he's basically Shinsuke Nakamura in New Japan Pro Wrestling in terms of name recognition and popularity is at the level of like John Cena in WWE, except Shinsuke Nakamura is he is way more talented in terms of in-ring prowess. And, his debut was extremely hyped up. I mean, this dude is an international superstar. And his match with Sami Zayn did not disappoint. It was one of the best matches I've seen in a long time. A lot of, hard hitting. It was obviously they call Shinsuke Nakamura the king of strong style, which basically translates to his strikes hurt a lot. It's basically the best way I could put it. And it was on full display 2 Fridays ago. Last Friday. Yeah, there we go. It was on full display last Friday night, so, there we go. And he ended up beating Sami Zayn, of course. I shouldn't say of course, that's not obvious, but excellent match. He did end up beating Sami Zayn. And there was a show of respect after. It was a show of respect after the match was over, and because Sami Zayn would be leaving NXT, but would be officially called up to the main roster. So that was a highlight of that night. Another highlight would be the women's match for the NXT Women's Title, Bayley and Asuka. That was another excellent match. It was basically Sami Zayn and Shinsuke Nakamura 2, and Asuka's the queen of strong style, I guess you could say, and she ended up winning the women's title by making Bayley pass out to the Asuka lock. I guess that's what they call it. And that was another really excellent match. And that really showed you that women's wrestling, whether it be the NXT level or the main roster level, is on the map now. Because we all remember how for most of the 2000s, women's wrestling was an afterthought. They used to call that, whenever there'd be a women's wrestling match on Raw, they'd call that like the bathroom break match or whatever. So, but now women's wrestling is actually important, which I love, because they put on some of the best matches. So there we go, and this proved it, especially in NXT. That match was excellent. So then you had the main event, which featured Samoa Joe and Finn Balor for the NXT Championship. And now Finn Balor, just like Triple H in the main roster, he's known for elaborate entrances at these takeover shows. In NXT TakeOver London, he came out as Jack the Ripper, because he has the whole demon thing, and he comes out as different serial killers depending on where the takeover show is going to be. And in London, he was, Jack the Ripper. And then first Samoa Joe came out in this one. And then because they're in Dallas, they're in Texas, he came out with a chainsaw, a nod, or homage, paying homage to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So I find that entrance, of course, really cool. That's what Finn Balor does. That's what he does. So match itself was pretty good. It wasn't the best match of the night. It's behind the Asuka Bayley match and the Shinsuke Nakamura Sami Zayn match. It was a good match. And now what happened actually was a little weird, because like at the very beginning of the match, Samoa Joe got like a cut under his eye and just started bleeding like immediately. It was a little strange seeing someone bleed that quickly in a match. It's because you know how the joke's always coming out. Ric Flair, just when he was in his prime, he just bled all the time, just bleed everywhere. This was a little odd. I mean, I don't know what made him bleed, but he just started bleeding, and then the officials had to keep stopping the match to try to fix his eye. And Samoa Joe was just shrugging him off like he didn't want to have them there. He just wanted to keep on going. So that kind of ruined the match a little bit, having the constant stoppage of matches. But it was a very brutal, a very, rugged, hard-hitting match. And Finn Balor ended up retaining, which I found a little bit surprising because I assumed that Finn Balor would lose and then be called up on Monday night. But something happened, or one of them was going to be called up, either Samoa Joe or Finn Balor, and neither one did. At least not yet. But I was a little surprised that Finn Balor kept it. But, that was last Friday, so, what can you do? But overall, NXT TakeOver Dallas was excellent. Most NXT TakeOver shows tend to be really, really good. I remember last year in NXT TakeOver Brooklyn, which was in late August before SummerSlam. People said that I actually missed it for some reason. I saw the main event though, but NXT TakeOver Brooklyn was actually better than SummerSlam, is what a lot of people were saying in 2015. So, yeah, NXT TakeOver shows tend to be really good, and looks like we have Gail here. Hey, can you see you? Oh, all right. Yep. Got a little interruption from the Gail there. That's always good. So, I don't really know if he's much of a wrestling fan, but I doubt it. But, I guess he's coming to say hello. So, now back to NXT TakeOver Dallas. But, yeah, NXT TakeOver Brooklyn last year was considered better than SummerSlam. And I don't know if this was considered better than WrestleMania. I didn't think it was. I thought it was a great show. Match-wise, it probably was better than WrestleMania. But in terms of the whole, scope of it, in terms of the whole entertainment value, probably not. But if you want, I guess wrestling, which is cool, I guess, then NXT TakeOver Dallas was an excellent show. So, well, that's really it. Really, only 5 matches to talk about. I guess I could, talk about the future of some of these guys. Interestingly, Apollo Crews wasn't on. He was scheduled to be on the match card, but he didn't show up on NXT TakeOver Dallas. What ended up happening was he actually made his main roster debut on the following Monday Night Raw after WrestleMania, which it was a surprise. It wasn't a surprise during the night because they announced it, but the fact that they announced it was a little surprising. I feel like that call up's a little early, but I'm gonna talk about it a little more in the next segment, my last segment of the day. But I don't really have much else to say. I mean, 5 matches, really talked about what I could about all of them. So I guess this is where we're going to take the break here. And then my last segment of the day, I'm going to give a review of the Monday Night Raw after WrestleMania, which is always proved to be the best show of the night, one of the more fun shows of the night. But I'll talk about that in the next segment. So I will now take a quick break. So stay tuned.